So hello and welcome to another fantastic episode that we're bringing to you from SGTV. We're going to be today discussing about the draft for public comment. Now, we're not a million miles away from actually when it's being released. It's the 28th of March. We've seen some information that's been coming out from the IET and some of the outline changes. So we're going to run through a couple of those. I've got Boyd with me and Nigel. So I've got the two guys here. These are two contractors that we are working closely with, and we're going to be getting their views on what they think of the regs and how it affects them as a contractor, and some of the proposed changes a little bit later on in this episode. So welcome, guys. I hope you're both well.
All good, thank you. Welcome. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and what you've been up to? What's been going on in your world?
Me personally, lots of things, contracting and my software company, obviously. Lots of things happening with that. Can't grumble on both businesses at the moment.
Perfect. So give us a quick shout out to your business. I'm going to let you do that on this episode. Go on, give me a shout out.
Okay, so I've got Certon, which is our document storage company. Obviously, it's finding documents at properties, QR sticker, stick it on the fuse board, on the alarm panel, on the boiler. You'll always find every single document at the property itself. We won a few awards a couple of years ago with the electrical industry, which gives us a good profile within the whole of the electrical industry. But obviously our product is more than just electrical documents. It's an O&M manual, it's a gas boiler, it's an asbestos report. Any document can be found instantly. And we're finding quite a lot of homeowners are absolutely loving it because of the fact that they always know where their certificates and documents are. So little quick, a brief one about the future. We've got a new product now, which is going down towards multi-property estate companies, housing associations, that sort of thing, which is taking a great turn with another manufacturer that we're partnered with, Europa. So that's all going good. Yeah, can't grumble.
Good stuff. And now that obviously with the changes that we saw coming out in 514, that's going to have a real big impact on your business. Hopefully, let's see how it pans out. So, Nigel, how are you doing? What have you been up to?
Yeah, good. I'm Nigel from Kinetic Electrical Contractors. We're based down here in sunny Wiltshire, mostly sort of specialise in sort of critical power applications. We do a lot of UPS installations, DC builds, sort of heavy cabling and stuff like that. So that keeps us
perfect. Good. Are you getting involved in the battery storage side of things? Yeah, is that sort of taking off from your business?
We are looking to sort of get more involved in the domestic battery storage. We've done a few bits. We've dipped our toe in it, but primarily it's more sort of like larger DC backup systems for like UPSs and stuff like that. But it's definitely the.
Well, I'll be sure to give you a shout when I want mine doing, because I keep looking at it and I keep thinking, okay, it must be time. And with the rise of energy prices, it's only a matter of time before we start seeing this as a mass market for electricians to be going in and installing. So that's a bit about us all, or a bit about you two guys, and we do really appreciate your time for joining us. We're going to be talking, as I said, we talk about Amendment 2 in the DPC. Draft public comment closed on the 11th of December 2020. Did either of you actually make any comments?
I'd mentioned about the 514 notification of documents at properties, and the identifications notices, which again, we're going to come up against that in a bit. That was the only thing I did comment on.
Nigel, did you comment on anything?
No, I didn't comment on anything.
You're the one that's sitting back and relaxing and just letting everybody dictate to you what's going on in the regulations. And it is vitally important, as you know, Boyd, with some of the comments. I'm sure that you've seen some of the draft comments that are coming out about the labels, etc. They do have to be listened to. If you're making silly comments and they're not being, just saying you don't like RCDs, for example, of course they're just going to sort of push them to one side. But all the ones that have got some structure to them and some reasoning behind them, they have to sit there and listen to them, because ultimately you're the boots on the ground and the ones that are actually doing the work. So it needs to be viable for you guys as well. How are you feeling about this change? We saw a change in 2018 to 7671 with the 18th edition. Does it seem like it's that was yesterday, and now we're like today, and all of a sudden we're seeing another document being released. And again, they're going to be looking at bringing out a new book. So a new brown book is going to be the one. That means it's going to have a knock-on effect to all the guidance notes and some of the things. Although the fundamental principles of those documents don't change, there always is some new changes that are happening. So how is it going to be affecting your business, Nigel?
To be honest with you, it always seems that whenever a regulation amendment or new set regulations is released, that it takes so long for it actually to filter down to ground. When the 18th was released, I still feel that now that there's a lot of contracts out there that are not implementing. I still see a lot of people not installing SPDs and stuff like that. And I always think like how are they getting away with it? So it almost feels like even though they set a date when things should be implemented by, it's not really. It seems like there's enough time and enough leeway for people to sort of do what they want for a while and then jump on board with it. Obviously, we try and get things in place as soon as possible, but it does take a long time to find like materials and certain things that you can work with and then standardise it across our company really. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Boyd, how is it going to be affecting you? I know we've spoken about a few of the bits already, but is there any other changes that are going to be happening that are going to be affecting you?
Well, I mean, going back to the cost of things, obviously every contractor's worried about how much things are costing them to keep buying new regs books, new guidance notes, new testing, new exams, because I'm in the private rented sector as well, the PRS scheme with the NIC, EIC, and obviously being a QS as well, I have to have the latest regulations on my certification to stay enrolled in the PRS scheme. So I've now got to go back and get the new Amendment 2 certification, sitting guild certificate. So that's another test I've got to do. So it's another, a few hundred quid I've got to spend on that. But yeah, I understand the need every couple of years that there are going to be new changes and new regulations coming or amendments, changes to certain regulations. They're omitting things and adding things in. And that is obviously going to have a knock-on effect. Same as what Nigel said, it's the contractors who are not doing it. They're the ones that get really on my sort of goat, is that who polices these people who are not doing the regulation changes. We were talking just before we come on air that, there's still people installing things to the 16th edition and knowing not really what they need to do for the 18th edition, now going to be Amendment 2, and they're getting away with it. They don't actually know the regulations, half of them, and they're the people who go under the radar. They're the ones who us good contractors do things correctly, but it's the ones who don't and who's finding them out.
And you can't price against it. You've got two prices in front of them. Oh, they're both part of a competent person scheme. But why you might expect? Well, I'm installing the correct equipment required to the regulation. But they must be fine. I'll go with the cheaper one. How can you compete? I
think even if we went a step back, and we said that somebody's not part of a competent person scheme and somebody that is a part of a competent person scheme, the homeowner generally doesn't know the difference. Yeah. They just see the price difference and they look at it and go, well, that one's cheaper. And they said they're going to do the same thing, but this one's more expensive. It's one of those. And I think, without getting too much bogged down by this particular subject of how it's policed and whatnot, people know my experience. I've been with the NIC for a number of years. It's not as clear cut as some contractors are led to believe. And without going too much into it, there's processes that you can go through as an NIC registered contractor. If you do see someone and you're pricing against someone that's registered, you can go through the correct channels and you can go through the complaints procedure. And there is the platinum promise there to protect your customers as well. So, you can do that, but without going too much into it. I mean, I appreciate what you two are saying about the with how it's going to affect your business with the pricing of these new, let's say that the AFDs are going to potentially make it, against someone that can just go to Screwfix or a local business and pick up whatever they see fit to do. I think we have got some tough times and some challenges ahead of us, especially in this industry. But I will say, be careful what you wish for, because, you know, we could take a look at the gas industry, for example. You know, they go back every 5 years. I don't know how much their retrain is or to get their ticket again. So, you know, we already hear rumours or murmurs within the industry that people are getting frustrated with doing training and updates and all that type of stuff. So, you know, I see it from both sides of the coin, as it were.
It's evolving so fast, though, especially with like electrics. You know, you can compare it for what it was back in sort of like the 80s and whatever to where we are now. It's just mental. It's a totally different world.
Yeah. Yeah, you look on the front couple of pages of the big blue book, as I call it now, but it's obviously not going to be the big blue book anymore. They do show you all the previous publications, and you look at the amount of stuff that's been added in since the last 10 years or so, because obviously technology's evolved. You know, we have got the EVs, solar PVs, battery chargers, and, you know, different types of RCDs being added. They've obviously got to update the regs. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the primary function, and then we have the government side of things as well. To, you know, especially when we look at EV chargers and the rollout, you know, sometimes the changes are forced upon us in that sense of, we've got a product, let's get it out in the masses, so it needs to be workable. Hence why we saw Amendment 1. Will you be working to it straight away, or do you not think you'll embrace it straight away? I know we're going to have the crossover between the two standards. We're going to see that 6-month transition that we normally see. So it will be March, and then what's that, around about September time, we'll see it fully.
As a company, we always go as soon as it starts, we start implementing it, because it does take time to find materials that you can work with that fit within the application that you need. So the sooner you can start implementing it, the better. That's from our company perspective.
Yeah, I think the same. You know, it's there for a reason, and, you know, the sooner you get it started, obviously you sort of you're already up there with the safety side of things, because it is a safety document at the end of the day. You know, it's been changed for a reason, whether you agree with some of the things in there or not.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw, when we saw the draft come out, we saw this year's worth of transition that they were talking about, and they were talking about the design element. Do you know much about that? They were talking about the design of it, and you couldn't carry your electrical design over that transition period. Yeah. I think that would have had a bigger impact on the way that especially larger contractors and house builders operated.
Yeah, we talked about it in the last video. Some contractors, they might have designed a building, a commercial property, for instance, 2 or 3 years before the actual thing starts coming out of the ground. And then all of a sudden you've got another amendment. Well, a lot of the actual design that you're installing has changed. So really, you've got to start from the drawing board again, in terms of, how things are fixed, selection and erection, etc. It has a big impact. Personally, I think the day it's issued, you've got to start implementing the works, same as Nigel said.
Yeah. What do you feel about that, Nigel? I mean, I know you're,
It almost seems like an impossible task, as you said. If you've had a large building that's been designed years in advance, then, as you said, you can't design it, redesign it all. Some of these like massive jobs take years. So that really is a difficult, sort of a difficult thing to implement. Obviously, easier with smaller jobs. And again, say if you're involved in like tendering and stuff like that, you're going to tender it to the cost of that, and then all of a sudden all these new things are coming. But if you try and think, right, I know I've seen the drafts, I know these changes are coming, I'll base my tender around that. You're probably not going to win it. So it's such a balancing act, and it is really sort of like difficult.
I think
one solution fits all.
I think we should see the wording tightened up a little bit, maybe, just because of the way that some of these, let's just use house builders as an example, but they're spanning them over 3 or 4 different sites, but because they've got the clear electrical design, they've got the ability to do that. They can say that, and I don't think that's fair for people, especially the end user. I've just bought a new build nearly a year ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. I've just sold mine.
But it's a year old. That there's nothing. you look at what's actually in there and the way that they've designed the system, still using a split load board. There's still no SPDs in there. And I'm not suggesting that they haven't done their calculations, because I don't know the in-depth. Do you know what? I haven't even looked at the certificate properly, because I think I'll probably pick up loads of different bits.
Did you get one?
Yeah, definitely got one. Yeah, that's part of the NHBC agreement, I guess. I daren't look at it because I'll be starting to rifle through it.
In my previous house with a new build, I ripped it to shreds. I thought this is not right, and it's all fudged. And again, as you said, split load board. Yeah, why?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with a split load board.
I personally hate them. Death to split load boards.
Yeah, I think and we'll have a look at that in a second, but. I
think just going back to what you're saying about the sort of time scale to implement the new regs. I used to work in the new build industry for many years, and we would win contracts, but there'll be different phases. So there might be 150 flats and houses going up on a state, but over the time of sort of 12 months, 15 months. But each phase, obviously, you could change the regs for that next phase, but the cost would have changed for when you won the contract.
Yeah.
So you might have won that contract for all three phases, but on phase 2 and 3, the AFDDs have come in. Well, there's another 200-300 quid a property, but the builder's going to say you're going to have to swallow that. And that's the difficult one.
So some of the changes that we're sort of seeing then from the draft, where do you want to start? Because again, we say what's the need for this new edition, but I'm looking down here at some of the changes that I've certainly read through, and there seems to be a lot in there again. They always seem to find something, and I think where do you want to start?
AFDDs.
All right, we'll start there then. I know that's the biggest one of them all. And the IET have released their document. They've gone on to mention about high risk residentials. That's what they've suggested at the moment. It hasn't excluded or included anything else from, as far as I can see. And I mean, is it a welcome change? The prices are coming down, certainly.
I guess the cost of each AFDD and what they are installed to, so what circuits they're connected to. I mean, I was just watching a video earlier on the E5 group regarding, obviously, not lighting circuits, anything under 32 amps, so anything over 32 amp shower circuits wouldn't be required. Things like safety circuits for fire alarm systems, things like that, they wouldn't be required. Obviously, you don't want somebody's life support machine cutting out because an AFDD found a fault. But so if you went down, so it was just, say, for instance, just socket circuits in houses, new builds, new installations, or high-rise buildings, etc. Potentially, you got at least a ground floor, first floor, flat circuit, kitchen ring, or whatever it is. You're looking at £150 each AFDD. Okay, that's on the high side of things. So you're looking £450 of property plus the VAT to buy the kit. Obviously you've got to install it, and it's obviously that the AFDD run electricity. They are using electricity when they're connected. No load connected on, nothing plugged in, but they're actually a little computer, aren't they, inside the device that are using energy while they're on sitting idle. So okay, might not be a lot on your electric bill, but you think you add up a block of flats, a high-rise building, and there's 150 flats in that building. You've got 3 AFDDs in everybody's flat. There's a bit of energy being used there, constantly on. But if it stops a fire occurring, then obviously it's worth it, I suppose.
Yeah, from anything that I've seen, and you might know about this as well, Nigel, that anything that I've seen coming out documentation-wise or about AFDDs, I don't think the general consensus is that they're going to be used on domestic properties at all. Have you heard anything different, Nigel? Have you read anything different?
No, I haven't read anything different to that. I say, like when our CBOs and stuff come out, it's just all going to be that price point, especially with such a large price for them. But the idea and principle, I do think is a fantastic idea. If you lived in a a thatched cottage or something like that, regardless of price, you just think
got on everything.
Can't risk it. Get it on the lot. And some people buy into that, and some people won't. But yeah, it's all it is very difficult because it always boils down to.
They're a safety device ultimately, aren't they? They're another addition that we're seeing to our consumer units, and protecting lives is the ultimate goal when we look at electrical safety. They're going to be, we start to look at SPDs in the way that they formed in the regulations. They were like one or two lines. And we're now moving forward with those, in great strides. I think the same thing will happen to AFDDs eventually. So our fault detection devices will be a mainstay within our consumer units.
The future is going to be a full board of a AFDD, and like Certon, when I was starting out and that with RCDs, RCBOs, the price of them was just ridiculous. And now I wouldn't install anything apart from sort of domestic dwelling, anything but an RCBO board.
I'm just looking down here as well, and we mentioned about RCBOs. We're probably right to touch on that now, and we're sort of seeing in section 5, we're seeing the RCBOs are looking to say that they're a good way to comply with the regulations. I've done quite a few talks over recent weeks, and I normally ask the question, how many people are fitting RCBOs over split loads? And I've seen a change. I've seen that they are installing more and more RCBOs. You've already mentioned, Nigel, that you're fitting RCBOs. Is that something that you're doing as well, Boyd?
Yeah, I've been doing it probably for the last 2 years now. I wouldn't touch split load RCDs anymore, purely for the fact of the nuisance tripping.
I'd call it that. It's unwanted tripping.
Well, okay, unwanted tripping.
I keep up with the terminology. It drives me mad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Nigel said earlier, RCBOs when they first come out. I mean, even RCDs. I know I only look 18, but I'm 50 next week. And I remember when RCDs came out, they were expensive in fuse boards. RCBOs, they were up 30, 40 quid a pop. They've gone down to less than 20 quid now. It's a no-brainer. You lose a circuit, you only lose the circuit that it's serving. You don't lose half of the house or half of the flat, because, the washing machine's gone pop. So, yeah, RCBOs all the way, surge protection. Again, for the sake of 40, 50 quid.
And for us as well, it's type A's as well. I won't do AC, just kind of pointless.
This is where I get to do my little plug about our Lucian board. We don't do an AC at all. So when we designed it, we went straight to type A.
Makes sense.
Looking at it, you can't see an installation that's used for general purpose. As soon as you put LEDs in there, that's gone straight out the window. You've got the potential for the DC leakage to be there. So at Scolmore here, we're looking at a Lucian and the need for the type A over anything else. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So just again on that's another change that we're sort of seeing as well, isn't it? The AC device, we'll probably see that sort of phasing out, moving away from the general purpose aspect. If you've got if there's no DC in there at all, then you probably could use them. But like I said, as soon as you start putting any DC,
I think you're struggling in domestic dwelling to find many things that don't. Maybe like an immersion supply. You didn't have anything. There's not much. It's just, to me, blanket across the board, job done. And I think for peace of mind as well, as a contractor, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think these types of changes are the ones that the electrician wants to see happen, purely because they know exactly where they are now. I speak to a lot of electricians, and they're all like, "Oh, why are the regulations always so grey? Why can't it just be this or this?" And then we know exactly what we're doing. There's never a
scenario. There's never a scenario that fits everything 100%, is there?
No. Ever. No, definitely not. But like I say, these ones with the types of devices, I think those ones should be the black and white, and that we move on from that from there as well. Do either of you do anything in sort of Section 7? I know you, Nigel, you said you do a bit of UPS backups and stuff, but in Part 7, are we working in those areas?
Remind me, Part 7, Jake.
Special locations.
Especially, I was going to say, I'll do a lot of bathroom refits, occasional swimming pools. Again, everything's always RCD protected. But was you going to talk about foundation or earthing arrangements for that sort of stuff? Or
I'll come on to that shortly, but I was more about the fact that 701, there's no changes.
Oh, okay.
And that one is the one that they normally mess around with and tweak and change. It stays the same, so which is a nice thing. What we'll say about Part 7 is that there's a lot more RCDs that are floating around in there. There's certainly some changes. So if you work in any special locations, and I'm not directing this at you two guys, more so the people that are listening in or watching in, make sure you really dig deep into there, because the changes that are happening around RCDs need to be able to look at as well. So just going back to your point then, Boyd, about this foundation earthing, we saw this, let's call it a movement, because it will be a movement at some point, where they were asking for contractors like yourselves to put in foundation earthing, whether that's in the structure or a ring around the building itself. How would that work for you guys? I mean, I certainly know that being, done work on site before, you're not there at the foundations stage.
No. That's the thing. I think the design stage electrically, the architects have got to get involved. I mean, a lot of the new build design and build stuff that I was involved with was mainly nothing to do with the infrastructure coming into the building. So all of the, the electricity boards supplies coming in, that wasn't anything to do with the contractor. Going down to the actual earthing arrangement of the building, that would certainly be sorted out, I think, at early stage with others, although the contractor would be the person signing it off. So it's quite a difficult one to get involved with without actually being involved with the building when the architect's drawing it on his AutoCAD,
Yeah, we're not heavily involved in domestic dwellings, and not certainly not with new builds, but I can definitely see how it might become an issue, because as you said, when it's foundation stages, you're not even, like electricians, not even going to be thinking about getting on site. Certainly from a sort of commercial aspect, and large buildings will be covered by having steel embedded in touching soil, which is going to be, well, I say I get our jail free, but it's not really going to be that much of a difference, and especially large buildings having lightning protection systems and such. That's not going to be, I don't think for a commercial sort of an industrial farm, too much of a massive change, but definitely for new build domestic, that's going to be a bit of a shake up, and you might have sparkies running around with ground workers, which could be fun.
Yeah, I know. We don't like to get dirty at the best of times, so running around a site with mud up to your knees.
Subdivision.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's part of their remit, to be honest with you. I mean, is it going to work? I don't know. I can't see that really working. But certainly for the next edition, will we see this one come in? Who knows? The IET, when they released that document for the main changes, they didn't put it in there. So you'd like to think that if that was coming in, they would say that that's one of their main changes. So we'll have to wait and see on that as well. One of you mentioned SPDs as well. Are you fitting them? Are you not fitting them?
Yeah.
I guess the commercial aspects you will be.
It's critical as well. So all critical circuits. So often if there's a large LV panel, I mean, they've been fitting SPDs in them for years. And then on sort of like the output board of a UPS would often fit a surge arrest as well, because with sensitive equipment, IT equipment, it's a no-brainer in terms of cost versus impact. On that scale, it's negligible. Obviously, it's not quite the same when you're looking at it in domestic dwellings.
Yeah. Again, you got to fit them at the origin. On the last conversation we had on the last video, I think Darren mentioned something about, obviously it's always advisable to fit them on your socket circuits, plugs. So any expensive equipment like your computers, put an extra 4-gang extension lead with a surge protection device on that as well to give you the level 3. I think that one is, surge a type 2 on the origin, and obviously add them elsewhere throughout the property as well. So it's only going to save your equipment in the event.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that's it needs to be thought about as a complete solution, opposed to just putting it in at the front end and just fitting and forgetting it. And we as electricians like to do that. We like to fit a device and forget about it and move on to the next one.
Yeah, SPD, next job.
Exactly. But I don't think it's a case for that. And, we carry out EICRs, but maybe the way to go is we start incorporating service contracts, especially with all these changes that are coming in. Is that something that you guys have actually thought about, maybe?
Certainly for larger sort of commercial jobs, we'll put things in place for like emergency light testing, fire alarm system and stuff like that. I suppose in terms of like incorporating something in that wouldn't be too sort of stressful with your EICRs and stuff like that. But your domestic dwelling jobs, I think that might be a bit of a struggle, but certainly.
I don't like to pay at the best of times. It's
exactly
telling me anyway. So, adding in that as well, it's definitely something that maybe come to fruition. But like I say, they don't
QR codes on it, couldn't you? And you could scan it.
You could do that. That idea
you two have got a
give my bank details after, yeah.
You two must have a little deal going on.
Sort of talking about that, obviously jumping forward, Jake, obviously about your notifications and the properties, the changes in that. The giving over a sort of a pack to the homeowner for the, a manual of how the product works or how their installation works, gives them an idea of, how everything can be used, like the RCD trips. How do we reset it, etc. Obviously, the labelling's changing now on the fuse boards, isn't it?
So if we start to look back at where we're at 514, around that sort of area. They're suggesting that the labels, from the conversations that I've had with some of the people that I know, that they're suggesting that the reason that they're going to take the labels away, certainly in a domestic, and again, Nigel, I don't know what you saw in regards to the commercial aspect, but some of the labels are looking to be removed purely because nobody pays attention to them. And the idea is that the certificate should be handed over to the customer. That should have all the details that they need in it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's too much when you go to look at a board. It's like all this, and everyone's got logo stickers, everything like that. And you're thinking there's so much information you can't take it in. It needs to be simple, clear, concise. Yeah, everything's labelled neatly. Job done.
There's one sticker that I think should stay, and they are talking about in domestic properties to get rid of it, which is the periodic inspection or the next retest date. At least if you saw something on like a new fuse board or a rental property that that the date it was tested, and they recommended next date of the next test. Now, if they take that away, or if it gets overlooked and you just assume that a certificate's been given, unless there's a record, so the homeowner or the tenant of the property knows where that document is, how are you going to sort of assume that everything has been tested and safe? Even though the sticker's there, doesn't mean to say it has been tested. Going back to what you said earlier about the next test date or a 10-year. It used to be 10 years, didn't it? You fitted a fuse board or you rewired to a house or a new property, and you say, right, next test date in 10 years. Who actually goes in for a homeowner's property and checks that in 10 years? Yeah. I don't know any homeowners ever asked me to come and check something in 10 years' time or 5 years' time. Private rented sector's bought this out big time now for the retest, because it's law now that the landlords have to get it checked every 5 years. Great for electricians, great for the homeowner or the tenant, because obviously the installation's getting safer because it's hopefully if the competent people are doing it, it's getting checked properly. But taking away that one sticker, I think for me is not, it's not a good idea. I think that's always the best one there.
I totally agree with you, to be fair, boy. When people come in and they look at it, it's a visual thing of, oh, I can see that this was last listed, and as you said, it might not be true, but from a sort of like consumer perspective, it says, oh, there's two various colours of BS6771. Why do they care? That doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah. Well, you see, you take a socket off or you take the fuse board lid off, you're going to see two different colours, and you don't need to have that sticker there.
It's obvious.
That sort of stuff, I think should be gone. I'll tell you a quick little story. So I went to the Churchill War Museum up in London about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Winston Churchill's War Museum, absolutely brilliant. And there was a fuse board on the wall, 1940 odd, and they still had the circuit board details chart on the wall next to the fuse board. It told you what was on each circuit, how many sockets, the size of the cable, the amperage of the fuse wire in the thing. And you know what? I took a photo of it and I absolutely loved it because it told me exactly what was on that fuse board. Now, one of the regulations, obviously in BS 7671 is you have to have a circuit details chart next to the fuse board. I'll tell you what, I can't tell you how many sparkies overlooked that one. And that is one thing that, it sort of gets on my goat a little bit when I turn up to do a condition report or, work on somebody's property. You've got no stickers, so you don't know when it was installed. You don't know what any of the circuits are. And it's just one of the things that I think should be a regulation and stay there.
That's actually one thing I've just been looking at is I want to get branded document holders for the plastic ones that you screw on the wall, so I can start including for larger installations that are just all there to hand. Yeah. Because it always winds me up when people stick them on the inside of a disc board or something like that, because they fall off. People rip them off to read them, and then they're missing. So it's a way to go. And don't get me started on old installations when they're all like perfect and like when you used to get the engraved like MK grid switches and stuff like that back in the day. I love that. I wish people would do more of it.
It's just a question for you two as well. It probably is about certification. When was the last time you actually went to, let's even like a school, for example? If you went into a school and you do a condition report, what's the chance of actually getting that document? Even in a domestic property, no chance. No chance.
There's a school local to me, just up the road. One of the first schools we put Certon in, and that actual incident that you just described there, Jake, was the reason why I wanted to install it in their school. So they asked me to do electrical check on a certain part of the building, and I said, "Have you got your previous certificates? Do you know where they are?" And they had no idea. They couldn't tell me what they did. They said, "Oh, are we meant to have one for a school?" I said, "Yeah, because obviously this is part of your, health and safety pack." So we done a condition report. We stuck it on Certon, and actually we've had 4 other contractors gone in, different various things, air conditioning people, gas people now, and they've all said that, it's the way to go. Now, obviously I'm sort of talking about my other business, but definitely
not again, surely.
Not again, sorry. But definitely having the way of finding the document for the homeowner, the property owner, or the commercial property, legible diagram. They're saying about now you have to have a legible diagram next to the fuse board. I think taking some of them away, when you've got contractors who don't even do it, that's again going back to what we said earlier. Contractors who don't follow any of the rules and taking this stuff away now, they're just going to say you don't have to do it anymore at all now anyway. So let's not bother.
Interesting times. So have we got anything else that you want to mention or we want to talk about? I'm just looking through here, and I know there is plenty more changes that are happening, as we've mentioned. I do know one that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's the Part 8. And I'm sure in the previous video we would have mentioned this as well. But the Chapter 82 about the prosumers energy installations, around that sort of area topic. We're looking at a new future, I think, and what we're seeing in that chapter is a lot of recommendations. We've mentioned previously in this video, certainly, that there is the need for a recommendation to come in and then sort of creep its way up. And I think that's the sort of similar thing to what we'll see with this. Chapter 82, are you bothered by it, or is it not really going to affect anyone really because of all the recommendations? We know as electricians, you tend to look at recommendations and sort of, we don't want to know about that.
It's obviously one of these new sort of buzzwords. You know, obviously we're not just taking electricity now from the grid, we're adding stuff in, so you're producing electricity as well as consuming it. So I completely understand the need for it to go in the regs. Obviously, depending on what details they add in, obviously the infrastructure is going to change, isn't it? So we're not just constantly sucking stuff away, we're adding stuff back in. So it is going to change the system, the network. So yeah, I can see why it needs to go in.
Yeah, it's just, this is that classic planting the seed, isn't it, before it blossoms into something massive.
Yeah, definitely. One of the changes that I did sort of look at when the draft came out was about the 2 terminals that sit on the back of a double socket. Did anyone, for the high integrity earthing, they believe, or the belief is that they're going to sort of say that there's no real requirement for that anymore?
I've always installed sockets as that, but I don't know many people that do it, or have come across that have done it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that.
Are you, I mean, Jake, so you talking about, I use Scolmore's sockets and switches, accessories throughout all of our installations. Are you talking about the 2 terminals on the back of the socket for the earth? So generally, I'd always put line, neutral, and earth all in the one. The spare one, I call it, would be for the fly lead if you're going to put one on the back of the box, and then you're keeping the ring final or the radial in one side, and then the other side is just to hold it on the
I always install it as on-site guide dictates, as one CPC into one terminal and one to the other, and that's what I rarely see people.
So the idea is that from what you see in the on-site guide is that they're going to be taking that part away, and it will just be, there's no requirement to do it. You can just put it in one terminal.
It's just going to make it, find what 90% of contractors do anyway. So
I think that's probably the way that they're looking at it, is that contractors are not doing it anyway. So why do we have this silly?
Still, people put in 2 CPCs and 1 bit of sleeving. So Stop it. Oh.
I think we'll sort of conclude there, really. I think there's, we've stretched out some of the points that we've seen.
I think I wrote down a few notes. I think you've gone over everything, Jake.
So thank you for watching today. We do really appreciate your time, and hopefully that's been of some use to you. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share the video. We will be back at some point, and maybe Boyd and Nigel will be with us when the release comes out. We're going to be doing a lot more content around that. So stay tuned.